Hello, everyone. Welcome to EAQA number 4. So today we are going to do a comparison of two of the bigger, more high-profile test automation tools in the market at the moment. Selenium, which has been around for over a decade and has been sort of king of the hill for a very long time, and Cypress, Cypress.io, which is the kind of new kid on the block, but it's gaining a lot of popularity as a useful tool, but as a cool tool as well. So we'll be looking at some of the pros and cons of both the tools. The last talk we did on Selenium, we got several questions around kind of comparisons of Selenium versus Cypress and when to use which tool. So we thought we'd do this session to hopefully talk through some of those points. And we'll go from there. So if I share my screen, if I remember how to do that. Bear with me. Share screen. Cool. Hopefully you can see that. So today we are joined by Giridhar. Giridhar is a test consultant. He is a frequent blogger and a Test Automation University trainer. And he's also a Cypress.io ambassador. So there's probably few people more qualified than Giridhar to talk through Cypress. Myself, I'm Ryan. I'm a software tester. I am an infrequent blogger, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Selenium today. So how we're going to structure this, I'm just going to run through a few of the features of Selenium. Then I'm going to do a quick demo, nothing particularly fancy, just a basic test, which we'll go through in a minute. And we'll do essentially the same test in Cypress later on. And it will give you a sort of a visual idea of how the tools differ and how the setup differs. So I'm actually going to be using Selenium with PyTest and Python today, but I'm not going into too much detail. So what you'll see is a kind of a nuts and bolts Selenium test, which would be very similar regardless of the language you choose. So then Giri will go through some of the core features of Selenium and of Cypress and how they compare to Selenium, and then we'll have the Cypress demo, and then we will we'll summarize and we'll open up to any questions. So feel free, you can ask questions as you go along, and what we'll do is we'll get back to them at the end of the session. So feel free to just type away. Cool. So Selenium has been around since the mid 2000s. It originated as Selenium RC, which doesn't exist anymore. And now we have Selenium WebDriver. So Selenium actually covers a couple of products. So you have Selenium WebDriver, Selenium Grid, and Selenium IDE. So this particular session is going to focus on WebDriver. So essentially, Selenium is just a suite of APIs which allow you to interact with the browser. So if I go through some of the key differences between Selenium and Cypress. So I think with Selenium, its best asset is possibly its worst asset as well. But it's a really flexible tool. You're not restricted by scripting language, or not as much as you are with Cypress. So you can use C# or Java or JavaScript, Python, as we showed today, Ruby. And then in terms of frameworks and test runners, the world's your oyster, really. So depending on what language you've chosen, there are hundreds of frameworks you could choose. Cypress, you're obviously restricted to Mocha. So Selenium supports remote execution, which is great if you want to run your tests in parallel, if you want to use Selenium Grid or one of the vendor-based cross-browser testing companies like BrowserStack or Source Labs, and you can't do that with Selenium yet. And browsers as well. So again, Selenium, as of Selenium 4, now supports Edge. So you can do fairly comprehensive cross-browser testing with Selenium. Again, you can't do that to the same extent in Cypress. Selenium also supports multiple tabs and multiple windows, which is again is a limitation of Cypress. So if you do have applications which generate open things in new tabs or new windows, you can't test those in Cypress. Selenium you can, and it's fairly easy to do with just some of the built-in commands. And that goes for iframe as well. So to move into an iframe is quite straightforward in Selenium. Again, there are limitations for Cypress. Selenium also has support for mobile testing through Appium. Which is great. So you can integrate your mobile testing into your Selenium project and keep everything together. You can't. Cypress is specifically for web and API. So you can't do that. You can't do that with Selenium. And because Selenium's been around such a long time, there is so much documentation out there. There's such a huge community on, Stack Overflow. There's hundreds, thousands of demos and blogs about Selenium. So it's pretty. You can be pretty confident that the answer you're looking for is out there, although it may take a little bit of digging. But that's really great to know that because so many people are using it, there's usually answers out there. Test Project recently, or Tricentis recently, produced their report on the state of open source testing, and I think Selenium was way ahead of any other automation tool as the tool you can't live without. I think Cyprus was in the list, as were many others, but Selenium was way ahead of any other tool with about 80-ish %. So yeah, you can just see how popular a tool it is, and why it's been king for such a long time. So I'm going to give a quick demo. So like I said before, I'm using Selenium with Python. But what I've done to avoid any complication, I've pretty much removed any specific Python code or any framework specific code. So what I have is a basic test which just contains the Selenium command, and I'm going to run that against a Parabank application. And what I'm going to do in my test is log out. I'm going to log in. It's a bit slow. I'm going to log in. I'm going to request a loan. I'm going to complete loan amount and a down payment, and I'm going to apply. And then to prove that my tests work, I'm going to validate this message here gets returned. So in true TV fashion, here's one I made earlier. So I didn't fancy writing it out during the session, and I'm not sure you'd want to watch me write it out either. So I've written out the test beforehand, and I'll just talk you through it quickly. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm specifying my driver and initiating my driver, and that's what's going to control my web page. So I'm using the Chrome driver. We'll talk a bit more about drivers later when we get onto the Cypress points. Once I've initiated my driver, I can navigate to my web page here using my driver.get command. And then I'm going to move into the actions. So I'm going to log in using my username and password. I'm going to click on the login button. I'm going to navigate to the request loan page, and I'm going to enter the amount and the down payment that we saw on screen a minute ago, and I am going to submit that, apply for that loan. Once I've applied, hopefully it will get accepted, and I will do an assert to compare the message that I get back via this variable here to the message that I'm expecting, which I've just stored here now. And then I'm going to close the browser down. And that's it. As I say, I've removed any, I'm not using, in this sense, I'm not using page object, or there's no PyTest specific fixtures in here. So it's just going to run these few lines of code, and hopefully it'll work. So I'm actually going to run it through through the IDE. So I'll run it here. Just open up on the other window. So we're loading up the web page now. We're logging in. We've entered the amount, and it's closed. Okay, so I appreciate that that's not visually, you can't see much there, but this is finished, and it's finished with an exit code of 0, which essentially means it's passed. It's found no errors. What I can do is fine. Out. Enter something else. I can then run this again. So now I'm expecting that this this will fail. Okay, and again, so this time it has failed. So it's failed on the actual message equals expected message assertion, which is here. So so that's what it looks like if it were to fail. But I guess the key takeaway from this is a real basic test for a very simple Selenium scenario that you'd probably come across quite regularly if you're testing an application, and you can see the kind of steps which are involved in creating this test. If we take a step back before we even get this far, one of the key things about Selenium, and one of the things that tools like Cypress have attempted to resolve, is the user experience in setting these tools up. So in order to run a Selenium test, you're likely to need to install Selenium for starters, but on top of that, you'll probably have to install a test runner, like PyTest or Mocha or whatever it is that you're running, followed by maybe an assertion library that you that you want to use. I'm using a built-in one at the moment, so and you also have to manage your driver. So if we go back to this line here, I've had to install this driver on my machine, and it's up to me to maintain the version of that driver compared to the versions of my browser. When they get out of step, you get problems with your tests. So there is some maintenance and some setup that you need to do before you can get going with Selenium, and many tools out there have tried to make that user journey a bit more user friendly. So there are some really great wrappers around Selenium. So many of the codeless test automation tools that are available in the market actually use Selenium under the hood, which is a great way of wrapping up all of this complexity and making Selenium much easier to use. You've also got tools like, speaking from a Python perspective, you've got tools like Pylenium and Helium, which again are wrappers around Selenium, which make some of these details, i.e. managing drivers and reducing the amount of steps you'll have in a test, and just again make it a better user experience. But as I said at the start, one of the great things about Selenium is it does give you the flexibility that other tools don't necessarily give you. You are in control of the language you choose. You are in control of the framework you want to work with. You're in control of your assertion library. And they're really great things. I know lots of people are keen to use the same language in their test automation that their developers use in their organization. And mostly you can do that with Selenium. So it's a great tool, and it's easy to see why it's so popular. I guess one of the last things I want to mention, one of the reasons people like it is the way that Selenium interacts with the browser is the same as a user would interact with the browser. So the way that Selenium enters text or clicks a button is exactly the same way as a user would do it. Some other tools don't quite do that. So if you wanted a tool to mimic specifically how a user would interact with the system, then Selenium is a good choice. I hope that made sense so far. I will hand over to Giri, and he can talk. Cyprus.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you guys please let me know once you're able to see it? Yeah. Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Okay. Let me just come back to Google Chrome. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Ryan, for explaining us about Selenium's positive features against Cypress. It was indeed very useful for us to understand what is what are the unique features that Selenium gives us. In fact, so this is the time for us to look into the Cypress side as well. What are the features that Cypress is offering us, and what are the how it is much better when compared to Selenium as well. But before we get into this one, if you haven't attended the previous session where I was talking about an introduction to the Cypress, I will just provide you the link just below this particular, this today's session's video. You can just go through that in case if you want to get to know about Cypress, because in today's session, I'm not going to talk about Cypress as such, in the sense like from the code level or how to install Cypress and how to make use of it. Rather, we are going to see only the comparisons between these two tools, and then we will slightly get into a demo. And many of you guys were asking about a couple of questions last time regarding page objects and other things, which I have incorporated in this particular session. So we will just go through that as well during the demo, and then we will just see which one suits us, and then we will just open up the question and answers. Perfect. So with that said, so the first and foremost thing when it comes to Cypress, of course, it is again a web automation tool, but the main objective of this particular tool is built for developers actually. But the features which Cypress is offering us, it is something that as a testers we started adapting it slowly, in fact. And I'm very sure that since Cypress is very young as of now, probably down the line after a year or two, it may get up to Selenium's speed and have lots and lots of features that both developers and testers would appreciate actually. So the main reason why like Cypress is much better is what it comes when it comes to the faster execution. So basically speaking, when we are trying to execute the test cases which are written in Cypress, it is super fast, at least when compared to Selenium. The reason behind this one is Cypress's inbuilt functionalities helps us out in drafting the test cases very quickly. And like Ryan said, it is completely browser based, in the sense like it interacts with the browser directly rather than having a middle layer like WebDriver or so. But when it comes to Selenium, it is much slower than Cypress. But again, if you are using Selenium 3.x version, it is much slower because of JSON wire protocol. I think if you are using Selenium 4.0, of course, after the W3C protocol adoption, I think it is a bit faster when compared to the previous version, but it is not as fast as Cypress actually. So that's the reason why developers always prefer Cypress, because of its easy to script feature and faster execution feature. And the next one, as a tester, right, that is something that we really wanted to understand. So as a heavy Selenium user, so I've been using Selenium for more than 8 years now. And this is one of the biggest headache that I have all the time when it comes to pipeline deployments, actually. So say, for example, I have a VM, and in that VM where, I have a Chrome browser, and that particular browser automatically updates. So say, for example, it's getting updated to 85, right? So ultimately what happens, the WebDriver version what we have for the Chrome driver is a bit outdated. So ultimately, during in the pipeline, automatically the test cases will be failing because of the flaky nature. But of course, like Ryan said again, there are other wrappers that are available, and there are other tools that are enterprise level tools that are available as well to address this particular issue, but it is cost effective as well. But when it comes to Cypress, like I said earlier, the infrastructure is totally different here in Cypress, because it has nothing to do with driver at all. In the sense, it has nothing to do with Selenium. So there are lots of tools that are available in the market that are built on top of Selenium. That's the reason why they share almost all the same kind of Selenium based issues. And the other one is for the developers, which they really like it from the mocking these API perspective. So in a sense, you let's assume that you work on APIs, right? And you want to mock one particular, probably like one particular service, and you don't have to adapt a huge tools like CA Lisa or something to do this particular mocking. But Cypress has an inbuilt feature which is very, very lightweight, which you can definitely use to mock these services, and you can just get the responses when your API is under development or it is down. And we have spice and clocks, which is very, very useful for the developers to do the time travel and other stuffs. But unfortunately, in Selenium as such, it doesn't have any mocking support. But yes, it has third-party supports that can do this particular part. But again, the integration is again a big headache. And that's the reason why people have started, at least what I have seen in my experience, when there is a Selenium framework that is available, people started using CA Lisa or something like that, actually. And the next one is the XHR validation support, which is very, very helpful when it comes to the modern web applications that we have as of today. Because many of the organizations have started adapting modern web technologies like React.js, AngularJS, etc., where XHR is one of the main component for application development, isn't it? So that's the reason why Cypress, when they are developing this particular framework itself, has given support for XHR naturally, which means that you can directly interact with XHR component without any hassle. But if you take Selenium, it is not having direct support as such, but of course it can be achieved using third-party tools. But again, the integration is again a big problem. And when it comes to that, you have to upgrade yourself with the versions and other things very frequently to make sure that that particular XHR library is working fine for you. And the next one is from the Cypress perspective, what I really like is its Testrunner capability. So basically speaking, Cypress tests can be executed in two ways. One is via Cypress test runner, and the other one is via command line actually. So basically speaking, Cypress test runner is again a simple UI where all the tests will be populated, and you can just click on that particular test to execute. This particular feature will be very useful for non-technical testers, like probably business testers who doesn't care about setting up all the necessary frameworks in their missions, and then asking them to execute the test cases from the code itself, which they really don't appreciate it, right? When it comes to Cypress test runner, all you need to do is just install the Cypress test runner, in the sense like it is coming as a separate module itself. You can download it and install it in their machine and give your Cypress tests to them, so that they don't have to install any other tools like Visual Studio or any other library dependencies. They don't have to do anything actually. All they need to do is just run directly from the Cypress test runner. And the other feature that is available as part of Cypress Test Runner is the Selector Playground, which is absolutely a great one. It is something like you can just select the component in that particular page, and the Cypress will automatically give you the code snippet what it has to do. Say, for example, if it is a username text box, you just select that Selector Playground option and hover over on it, and it will just directly give you a simple Cypress code snippet, which will do wonders, which you can do whatever you want with that actually, like typing or clicking or whatever it is actually. So it makes things very easy, and that is the reason why developers really like this particular tool. And it has integrated developer tool as well, where they can just directly get into the browser when the test cases are getting executed and check for its network capabilities, or they can just check for the CSS CSS kind of differences, each and everything that can be done from the development perspective. In fact, as a tester, I really like this particular option because it helps me in understanding what is happening behind the browser, actually behind the application, like network, what is it happening, what sort of XHR request that is happening. So as a T-shaped tester, it is my responsibility to start looking into all these kind of things like APIs, securities, networks, each and everything that are related to that particular web application. And when it comes to Selenium, of course, we have Selenium IDE, which is absolutely great for business testers as well. But again, it is something like you cannot run your WebDriver tests with Selenium IDE. So Selenium IDE is different and Selenium WebDriver is different. So all you need to do is like use Selenium IDE to just record and playback. But the problem is like you will not be able to do anything like data-driven testing, like pass your test data from Excel sheets. So that kind of feature is not really supported by Selenium IDE, but it can be done in Selenium WebDriver, but it requires lots and lots of coding as well, which you need to know that. And the other one is, like I said earlier, Cypress is an end-to-end testing tool. So what is that end-to-end testing tool? Let's slightly touch upon that particular part. We all know what is automation pyramid, right? So in that particular automation pyramid, if you take, you have three components. One is UI level component, and the second one is API level component or integration level components or tests. And we have the unit tests at the bottom as well. So which means we should have more unit tests, probably like I would say 50%, and 40% should be integration tests, and probably like less than 10% should be your UI tests. But that is how it should be done. So when it comes to the automation pyramid, Cypress is able to help us out with two layers without any extra support. So the first layer is the UI support without any doubt, and the second layer is the API testing support. So yes, Cypress can be used for the API testing as well, in case if you really wanted to adapt only one particular tool to do your API testing and UI testing. And one thing what I really appreciate with Cypress is something like it is, since it is an end-to-end testing tool, you can adapt it into your team so that irrespective of the language, irrespective of the common language between the developers and the testers, Cypress plays an important role in giving a common tool, common testing tool between the developer and the tester. So the developer also can use Cypress, the testers can also use Cypress for their UI testing, API testing, etc. So which means the collaborative work is getting more enhanced when it comes to Cypress here actually. But when it comes to Selenium, Selenium is just simple web automation tool, but it doesn't have any API testing as such. But We can have third-party tools to do this particular API testing, like Rest Assured or so. But I don't think so that you can directly integrate Selenium WebDriver with API testing as such. So having said this, the other important feature that I really like when it comes to Cypress is its automatic retry capability. So what is this automatic retry capability? When it comes to Selenium, we have implicit and explicit waits, right? So we have, we just wait for a particular element to come, or we use thread.sleep, or we use pause in order to make sure that something is coming up there. But when it comes to Cypress, you don't have to explicitly tell what is the kind of a wait that it has to do. So Cypress has its own algorithm written for the automatic retries, which means when it automatically waits for the page to load, and it automatically waits for that particular component to load as well. So you don't have to write any extra line of code to do this particular automatic waits and automatic retries, right? And the other one is the screenshots. I have to stress on this particular part. So if you remember, in Selenium, we have screenshots that has to be taken whenever there is a failure or whenever there is a success scenario, right? So we need to explicitly tell what has to be taken when it comes to a failure scenario. So we might put a small line of code in our catch. So once we get the exception, we just tell the Selenium to take a screenshot of that particular application or that particular application state and says that it is getting failed. But in Cypress, there is a feature called time travel, where it just takes the screenshot of the entire DOM, actually, just takes the entire DOM snapshot, and it just shows us as a time travel. Probably we will be able to see during the demo. And if you want more details about it, please go through my previous session, where I have just talked about that particular feature in detail, in fact. And the other one is, like Ryan said, yes, of course, Cypress is very easy to install, actually. So it has all the dependencies in it, everything. So you name it, it has everything. Say, for example, assertion libraries like Chai. So it has an inbuilt Chai, assertion library within Cypress. Say, for example, you call it, Mocha, a test runner, a testing framework, right? It has in it. But like we saw in the Selenium site comparison, Mocha is the only test framework that Cypress supports as of now. But it doesn't support any other test frameworks that are available like Selenium. I mean, like testing JUnit, XUnit, depending on the programming language that we choose from the Selenium perspective, right? Whereas if you take Selenium, the installation is little bit complex because say for example, like I work for a customer who's having an enterprise level framework, which means that that particular framework is being used by almost like 25 teams, actually. So basically speaking, that particular framework is so huge, in fact. So if you want to install that particular package or that particular framework in your machine, the amount of components that we need to bring in is tremendous, actually. So it is not an easy installation of that particular framework. We need to make sure that the versions are matching each other, and we should not be getting any version mismatch, something like that. So those kind of issues are a little bit tedious when it comes to Selenium. But again, we have been living with that for almost like a decade now. But we have to see how it is going to happen in the future as well. But when it comes to Cypress, it is very, very simple. With one command, npm install Cypress will install everything that are required for that particular framework for you. And the next one is error messages. Definitely, as a Selenium user, we might have seen error messages, right? The most of the times what we see as part of the errors are the stack traces, where it just directly says null pointer exception and it just throws us a big stack trace, actually saying that it'll be Greek and Latin for us, actually. Sometimes we don't know where it is failing, what it is failing, and each and everything, actually. But when it comes to, of course, it comes as part of your experience. But as a beginner, as a 3 to 4 years of experienced person, you will not be able to understand most of the, error messages that we are getting from Cypress side, actually. But when it comes to Cypress, at least with the latest version of 4.x, they have very, very clear error messages on, and they will just say it in a simple English statement that what is that particular error, and they will directly say whether it is an error from the Cypress framework, I mean, from the script, or is it from the application itself actually? So that kind of a tendency, or that kind of a capability is currently not available with Selenium. Probably, I'm not sure whether there are any third-party packages we need to import in order to get that kind of an error log. I'm not very sure about it. Probably you can just ping me in the question or in the comment if you know something like that. And the next one is excellent documentation. Cypress, since it is, it's very young, and they know what is the kind of issues that other test automation tools are giving us, and that's why they have documented everything, each and everything that you want about Cypress. You can just go to their official website, and of course you can see all the documentation that are required. In fact, whereas if you take Selenium, the documentation as such is a bit okay. It's not so great, but the community support is excellent actually. So when it comes to Selenium, it's been, like I said, it's kind of a legacy test automation tool for me. The reason is like it has been used by many people across the globe, and they might have definitely seen multiple issues, and some way or the other they would have got answer through Stack Overflow or some community like that. So it has a great community support when it comes to issues that we handle, issues that we face. So having said this, I'll probably get into the demo, and I will just show you a couple of, touch upon the Cypress framework. We will just talk about page objects. We will definitely talk about the Cypress test runner, and we will just see how we can execute the test cases from the CLI as well, right? So I'll directly get into the Visual Studio. Perfect. Are you guys able to see my Visual Studio by any chance? Yeah, cool. All right, okay. Let me just open it again. Perfect. Okay. So on the left-hand side is what I have created the project, and it has the Cypress framework as such, probably the inbuilt framework itself, where we have fixtures, we have integration folder, we have plugins, screenshots, supports, node modules, cypress.json, of course, and we have packages.json as well. So now what I have done is, probably I'll just address first the the page objects question that people asked last time. So yes, it is possible for us to do page objects just like how Selenium is doing. But again, when it comes to Cypress, they officially say not to use page objects. Rather, they prefer something called as app actions actually. So what is this app actions? It is something like custom commands that you can create yourself, and you can just compartmentalize according to your page, and you can just make use of that particular method, that function that you're creating for that particular page, or the action that is happening. But when it comes to a page objects, it's exactly the same way that we have done it in Selenium. We have a page objects class. You can just create directly with different types of pages. One good news with Cypress is, if you might have attended the previous session, you don't have to worry about driver session at all. So there is no WebDriver involved here, which means one less problem for us. Because when it comes to shifting the drivers between multiple pages, that's always the big trouble when it comes to when it comes to the scripting of that particular application. So that's where developers are not quite happy with the Selenium, because of its lots and lots of lines of code that we need to add, right? And like driver.find element by. So those kind of lines of codes are a bit complicated for developers to write it, and that's the reason why they don't really appreciate Selenium. But they started really liking Cypress because of its simple nature actually. So I'll show you the page object, what I have created. So it's just a simple one: create a class, and this is one of the function, and this is another function that I'm doing. So let's see slightly about the functions actually. So, but before that, let's see what is the scenario we are trying to automate. Okay, so I'm going to use the same Parabank application what Ryan was using. So I'm just logging in. I'm not going to do anything with loan. Rather, I'm going to do something with bill payment actually. So when I click on this bill payment, I have these many components that are coming in this particular page. So we are going to see how we are componentizing this particular page with the page objects in Cypress, right? So to do that, what I have done is I just created a simple page called bill payments page. And this is the place where I have just put all the components. So you might be wondering, what if there is a change in this particular locator? What is going to happen for my entire script? So basically, Cypress has a feature called aliases, which means you can just make this particular locators component with another string that you can just map it, which means you can directly call this particular string wherever you want. So automatically when there is a change in the locator id locator, you can just come and update it, and it will be reflecting throughout the entire page. Wherever we are using first name, it will be available throughout the page actually, so you don't have to worry about changing it again and again in different functions. So it's a typical page object function, but it is very very simple for us to do, so we don't have to worry about creating, like, if you're a C# user, you don't have to put it like iWeb element, or if you're a Java user, you don't have to put web element, finds by. So those kind of headaches are not here, because it directly takes, irrespective of what locator type we have, like CS, mostly the CSS selector. If you want to make use it with, say for example, ID or name or class name, something like that, you can just use hash function to add those kind of components over here. So it just takes automatically for you, so you don't have to worry about it. All we need to do, make sure, is to just export this particular page. That's it. So you don't have to pass any drivers, like I said earlier. All you need to do is export this particular page, where you can make use of this particular page directly in your test class. All right. So this is again a login page object where I have just created, and this is a base page where I have common functions like launching the application, logging out from the application, and you can just customize it however you want, like putting a pause or something like that actually. So it is up to you to decide how this base page should be looking, but make sure that you're exporting it as a default page, default class name here actually. Now let's get into the spec, which is going to be our test class, right? Since we are using Mocha, we have to use .spec over here. So we are using .spec class here, and all we need to do is simply import that particular page objects that you're going to use. It's something similar to what we have done it with C# and Java as well. But instantiation of that particular page objects are quite easy here. So you don't have to worry about creating an object, and no big hassle way of creating objects are here actually. Of course, we are creating an object here and assigning it to a constant, and you can directly write it something like this. So you don't have to worry about driver at all. You don't have to. I'm really insisting this because one big trouble that I had with Selenium is the drivers actually. Most of the time, if we are not passing the driver correctly to the different pages, it's going to fail and it's going to tell you what is the issue, right? So when it comes to Cypress, we don't have to worry about that at all. So this is going to be my simple test using page objects. And one more thing, what I wanted to insist is developers don't prefer using page objects. Rather, they prefer directly using app actions. Probably in the next session, I think we are planning to have lunch and learn sessions where we will have one dedicated session for page objects and app actions actually, because that is a huge topic, and that is how we can just try to build a framework that is absolutely great when it comes to Cypress, right? So this is what we have done from the page object perspective, and this is how we are writing the test cases as well. It is very, very simple to write. So if you want to interact with the component, you can just directly write cy.visit and cy.contains. All those things can be done within cy itself. So it is equivalent to driver.findElement by ID or something like that, where you don't have to worry about instantiating the driver according to the browser. So you can directly use this particular part. All right, so now let's do one thing. Let's try to execute and execute it from the test runner perspective. So to do that, I'm just going to give npx Cypress open. So what it does is it just opens the Cypress test runner. So this is the test runner that I was talking about. All these are the test cases that we have created. And here is our Parabank application that we created. So basically speaking, you will not be able to see all the page objects and everything. So it just gives directly the spec file. So when you're giving it to a non-technical person like the business testers whom I'm talking about, right? All you need to do is just zip this particular folder, just zip this particular framework and give it to them, and unzip in their probably like C drive or something, and you can directly import that particular project here. So automatically only the test cases that are related, test cases that are there in that particular framework will be shown here. So it will not be showing any other files like page object files or any configuration files or JSON files, anything that is irrelevant to this particular testing module. It never shows for us actually. So we have this particular test runner, and this is the place where we customize to execute against different browsers. Please keep in mind to download 4.x version in order to get support from the multiple browsers perspective. If you have 3.x version of Cypress, you will not be able to have it. Probably the latest version will have better features from the cross-browser testing perspective as well. So basically, this is how it works from the cross-browser perspective. Since Ryan was talking about the browser stack and Sauce Labs over there, I just wanted to talk about the cross-browser as well from the Cypress perspective. What we have here are the browsers that are installed in your machine actually. So basically, this is the place where we are trying to run that execution. So any browsers that are installed in your machine or in that particular machine is what it takes and executes the tests without doing any extra configuration at all. Now, you might be wondering, what if I want to run against different versions of Chromes? Cypress is amazingly supporting the Docker as well. So the Docker images that are available for Cypress has multiple versions of these browsers, and you can directly instantiate that particular Docker image, and it installs Cypress in it. It installs the browser versions what you want, and you can execute it against that particular browser version, and then it just disposes itself actually. So we don't have to worry about it. So having said this, let's try to execute and see how it executes here. All we need to do is just click on this particular test case. That's it. So I'm going to run it against Chrome 83, and it just opens my Chrome, and it just, launches the application. So if you see here, it just enters everything and logs out. As simple as that actually. So you don't have to worry about seeing whether the browser is coming up or what is that is happening. And you might have seen the amount of in a sense, like the pace that the test cases are getting executed. It is very, very fast when compared to Selenium. So this is what I meant by direct interaction with the browser rather than having a driver in the middle actually as a middle layer, which slows down the test execution part. If you remember, I was talking about the time travel, right? This is what I was talking about on the left-hand side. You will be able to see on the left-hand side what is that is happening on each and every component on that particular page before the test getting executed. So if you see here, it is executing all these things. So these are very, very useful for developers and testers when we are trying to debug what error it is coming actually. So this is something that you don't have to take screenshots on your own, in the sense that you don't have to take screenshots. It just takes automatically for you. And when you close this particular session, it just clears it for you. So you don't have to worry about memory consumption at all. If you think you want to save as a video, or if you want to save as a screenshot in a particular instance, you can configure it accordingly. So Cypress has very good configuration, file as well, configurations as well, where you can just go and change according to your requirement. So if you see here, I think I have enabled video automatically. Let me just try to see if it has captured the video. No, it has not captured the video. So I have just disabled that particular feature. So if you see here, I will not be able to see that recording here. So I think it should be there. No, it's not there. No, sorry. I have just disabled that particular feature, so I'm not able to see that. But again, the XHR that I was talking about, right? If you see here on the left-hand side, so you will be able to see that particular XHR request over here. Over here, actually. So this is the main advantage of having Cypress. So you can just mock this particular service, and you can return whatever you want actually. So say for example, like if you want to validate the negative scenario, like error message scenario, so you don't have to bring down the service to do that. or you don't have to go for a commercial license to get a mocking service for these kind of issues. Sorry, these kind of requirements. So you can just directly mock it using Cypress, and you can just directly see in your application that is getting reflected in the real time itself. So you don't have to worry about doing and pushing the code, and all those kind of headaches are not really, you don't have to worry about those kind of things with Cypress. And even if you see here the XHR request over here, you can just see get 200. You can mock this to make sure that it is getting failed or something like that. And you will be able to see lots and lots of errors. So let's see the, I'll just take another 5 minutes to show you the negative scenarios as well, where it just shows the error messages, all right? So for that, let me just go here and just change something like, say, for example, I'm going to remove this. Okay, let me just put it like, I'm going to give Giri was here. Just a locator name actually. So I'm not going to do anything else. Let's do one thing. Let's go to our Cypress test runner again and stop it and run it again. So let's see what's going to happen. So in an ideal scenario, it should fail, right? So let's see. Looks like the parabank is not responding properly. Let me just retry the test. Yeah, cool. So in an ideal scenario, it should be failing, saying that, it is not able to identify. If you see here, this is what I was talking about actually. So this is something that I really like with Cypress Test Runner, where you will be able to see why it is failing in fact. So it just says expect to find element to this one, but never found it. But if you take a typical Selenium WebDriver framework, it will just throw this particular stack trace, and it will be something like, you should go and see what is exactly happening. And with the 4.6 version of Cypress, there is a feature that you can directly integrate your IDE, and it just throws and it just shows where exactly that particular error is coming. So you can directly get into the code level to see where exactly it is failing, and you can just go and do the changes. Let me see if I've clicked it. No, I haven't configured it. I think you need to configure it. I think I configured it wrong some time back. That's the reason why it is not navigating. So once I click this one, it automatically opens my Visual Studio, and I think it just shows where exactly it is failing. So that's the capability of Cypress when it comes to debugging, and this is the reason why this is also one of the reason why developers really like using this particular tool. If you see here, the coding structure is very, very clear. No unnecessary imports, no unnecessary line of codes. Everything is straightforward when it comes to all these kind of locator strategies and interacting with the locators and so on and so forth actually. And you can customize the reports however you want. You can customize it with Mocasm report, or I think recently Allure support is also there. You can make use of that. And good news with Cypress is it easily and seamlessly integrate with any CI/CD tools that are available. Of course, Selenium also does it. But again, the way that it is getting integrated with CI/CD pipelines like Circle CI, right? When it comes to Cypress, it's quite amazing because of its parallel execution nature. You can just try to split your test cases, and Cypress has the feature of automatically executing your test cases with different agents based on the load balance and everything. So probably we will talk about in one of the lunch and learn sessions about that particular parallel execution as well. So having said this, here comes the $1,000,000 question. Probably, which one should I choose? So that is again, a great, that is again a big question that we need to answer, in fact. So basically speaking, it is up to you guys, in fact. So personally, I have worked with both the tools. Both the tools are so great. And I personally feel that in some areas, Selenium is absolutely great. Say, for example, like if your application requires IE support, right? A typical IE browser, then I think Selenium is the best tool to do that, because some of the applications that are running in the back office are mostly supporting IE. So people who are using that kind of an infrastructure can just go for Selenium. But again, if your application is modern and it uses modern web technologies, and it has lots and lots of modern web components as such in your page, and it is completely web-based application, yes, Cypress is much better. Again, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is there are a couple of trade-offs that we need to do with Cypress, but again there are a couple of workarounds that are coming these days. Say for example, like iframes. Iframes is not come; it is something like Cypress supports, but with some workarounds. Probably down the line they might be having in the roadmap to fix that particular issue. I guess I'm not very sure about it. But again, like Cypress is very young and it just takes time to evolve. And it's just, I think if I'm right, it's just 4 years old, if I'm right, not more than that. So I think that is something great. And I'm seeing many users have started adapting Cypress these days, because when I go to the npm.js, I can see weekly downloads as 1 million for Cypress, and almost like 1.5 million for Selenium actually. So it's almost reaching Selenium's popularity. So I think many organizations have also started thinking about non-Selenium based testing tools, especially from Cypress, or I think recently Playwright, if I'm right, and Nightwatch.js, and we have other tools as well, like Puppeteer, something like that actually. So people have started using the modern web application test automation tools. In case if you think your application is built on modern technologies, it's up to you guys actually. So it is nothing which is good and which is bad. So it's up to you guys to choose which one do you want for your own requirements. So having said this, we will directly get into the questions.
So I think we've got a couple. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can answer that actually.
Yeah.
Would difference in node version of Jenkins and Docker image causes issues in CI? I I I think so actually, because probably it's nothing to do with Cypress as such, but I think it should create an issue. Probably you should make sure that it is having the right version of Node support for that particular application or that particular browser that you're trying to execute, Sarita. And the next one is, can you share the Cypress code which you demoed? Of course, yes, Anand, I can definitely do that. It is there in my GitHub. If you go to GitHub and search for grajk88, grajk88, you will be able to see this particular code in that particular repository. You can, download and make use of it. Any other questions, folks? Any other questions, suggestions? Any other comments? I think definitely many of us are using Selenium, right? So do you guys really think that there are other non-Selenium based test automation tools that can boom in near future? You can just type it in the chat actually.
So I know you mentioned Puppeteer and Playwright seem to be getting quite a lot of traction. Playwright in particular is, I think, very, very new in the last few months. Playwrights.
Yeah. Test Cafe, yes, that's right. Yeah. I haven't personally used it, but again, I have heard that it's a really good tool, in fact. So yeah.
What's really great to see is that there is some competition, which then there hasn't been in the same way maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There are now seemingly it used to be which framework are you using for Selenium, and now it's potentially which tool are you using, which is nice to see. And I think that may actually increase encourage changes in Selenium in the future and Cypress and these other tools. If there are other tools which do a different job, I'm sure we'll see some of these Cypress features moving into Selenium and
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, Ryan. I'm totally with you, because we can't say that there is only one particular tool that can do everything, actually. So we need to see, at least understand whether it is going to fulfill our requirement, and then choose that particular tool. One thing that we really wanted to think about is from the futuristic perspective. So say, for example, uh, you need to think if that particular tool is having that particular tool or framework is having how many contributors. So if there is only one contributor, try to think whether you have to use that. The reason is, down the line, if he is not going to support that particular tool, you will be in deep trouble, actually. You will not be able to get support for that particular tool. So always try to think from one perspective, that if you're adapting an open source solution, try to see how many contributors are there, and what is the level of support that you can get, and all these kind of basic considerations has to be in place to choose the right set of automation tools when it comes to real-time application testing. Yeah. Oh, I think there is one Luzmila. Hello, thank you so much for joining today. Great. In case if you need anything, do let us know. We will try to see how we can help you out with Cypress.
There's a couple of extra questions just popped in as well.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't see that. Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. I didn't see that. All right, okay. Why use Cypress and Docker? What are the benefits? Oh, that's a great question, actually. So basically speaking, it is up to us to decide. So it is something like, if you want to do cross-browser testing right way. Say, for example, if you want to run your test cases against Chrome 70 and Chrome 80 and Firefox 70, just for an example, okay? So the problem is, you cannot install, so at least there's one browser variant I'm talking about, but in real time, we need to execute it against 3 or 4 different versions of that particular browser itself. So the reason why we have to use with Docker is, you can directly install the browsers of that particular version without installing it in your local machine. So say for example, like if you want to execute your test cases against 5 different browsers, you cannot have 5 different machines that has that particular browser, right? So that's the reason why we have this particular Docker solution. I think it is available for Selenium as well, like Selenium. I think that got deprecated recently. So you might need to check for other Dockers that are available for Selenium. But Cypress has very good Docker support, and all you need to do is just spin up, and you will be able to execute the test cases for different browser versions. Technology stack. Oh, wow, good. .NET, Microsoft Azure. Given above requirement, what would be your choice of tool to automate web UI? Wonderful question, Anand. So basically speaking, what I would really think about is, of course, whether it is going to be completely web front-end application. If it is going to be completely front-end application, I would prefer Cypress. But again, there is a catch. There is a catch that we need to slightly think about choosing Cypress as well. I will be seeing whether it has anything to do with the Cypress trade-offs. Say, for example, multiple domains, or is it going to have multiple tabs? So those kind of trade-offs that are available as part of Cypress, I have to look into that one as well. Based on that, if I come to know whether it is not going to do with anything with the trade-offs, yes, I will go with Cypress directly without any doubt. There was a big problem earlier in 3.x version. Because of this, Cypress was not able to reach many people. One common question that I was having probably a couple of months back was, does it support cross-browser testing? So that was a big question that was there, and that's the reason why Cypress was not able to, reach many people. But now it has started, reaching many people with respective to cross-browser testing. I think, yes, to answer your question, Anand, I will go for Cypress. Cool. Okay, what else do I need to talk about? Yeah, probably this is just a simple test automation tips. Try to think always from the automation pyramid perspective, guys. The reason is like you need to have more unit tests, and probably 50% of your test coverage should be from unit tests, and probably like 40% from your integration tests, and only 10% should be from the UI perspective actually. But we are always thinking in a inverted way. So if we think that if we have more UI tests, that means that my application coverage is huge. In an ideal scenario, that is not the case actually. So it's your business logic that you need to validate, and your UI tests should be something like it has to see whether the logics that has happened behind your front end application or your browser is getting populated there or not. That's it actually. So try to think from that perspective, and please concentrate more from the integration testing perspective and the unit testing perspective if you're a developer. And when it comes to UI, the modern testing I think testing strategies like visual testing or A/B testing are booming these days actually, right, Ryan? So there are lots of tools that are supporting it, especially tools like Apply tools, and with its AI based visual testing. It has been used by many people to get more benefit when it comes to the visual testing perspective to identify the visual bugs. Good news is there are open source tools as well that are available for visual testing, but you need to think carefully about choosing it actually. Even Cypress has inbuilt a visual regression library, if I'm right. Sorry, package, I guess, not package, I guess. So when you're trying to think, try to think from not from pixel by pixel comparison tools, because that is ideally not going to help you at all at any time. Try to think tools like Apply tools or Percy. Of course it is licensed, but again you will get the best return of investment for that actually, right? So that is where the UI part comes into picture. So mostly focus from the UI side of the particular application. So that is something that I wanted, really wanted to insist in this particular forum.
That's good.
Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Ryan.
I was gonna say, I think we'll definitely do more Cypress sessions in the future. It's really popular, and there's lots of people who seemingly want to know lots more about it. So we'll definitely put on some more sessions that look at some of these points in detail. So whether it's mocking or CI/CD or Docker, there's a ton of stuff that Cypress can do, and it'd be good to explore that in a bit more detail. So we will put on some more sessions.
I think there is one more question from the question and answers. For API and UI layers, we already have many automation tools. Do we need to, or we have any tools to perform unit testing, or just pair programming with developers on it? See, unit testing, it depends on what is it you're trying to do here, Gandhi. So what I think is like Cypress recently started supporting Jest, if I'm right. So you can make use of that particular unit testing. And one more thing, what I wanted to insist is try to make sure that you have one framework for everything. To be very honest, that's where I started liking Cypress a lot. That gives more collaboration work between developers and testers, because if you take Cypress, it has support for Jest, and you can just make use of that particular if I'm right. Just let me just cross check actually. Come on. Yeah. So Jest, yeah, perfect. So it has support for Jest, and you can just make use of that for unit testing and API testing and UI testing. You can use Cypress as well. So if you think your application is much feasible and it is completely web-based, try to use one tool. Try and see whether it is going to be useful for you.
Cool. Sorry,
Definitely.
I was just typing in the chat, but I might as well say it.
No worries.
If there are topics, Cyprus or otherwise, that people are interested in hearing more about, then you can comment on our Meetup page, and we will try and find people to give those talks. So if you're interested to hear more about Puppeteer or Test Cafe or Playwright or whatever it is, and specific Cyprus topics as well, then yeah, put it on the group or message one of us, and we'll try and find the right talkers to put on these sessions.
Definitely is actually. Oopsie. Yeah,
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and hopefully I'll put out this recording, but hopefully yeah, we'll see some more stuff in the future, so just keep an eye out.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for hosting this session. And guys, I think it was very useful for you. Just in case, if you have any queries, please don't hesitate to contact me and Ryan. So we are available in LinkedIn and we are in Twitter as well. So you can directly get in touch with us and we can definitely help you out. And when it comes to Cyprus, we have, I think most of you are aware, but again, there is one meetup group called Cyprus.io UK community, which is dedicated for Cyprus. You can definitely register there, and there are events that are being conducted as well. So you can directly join there, and there is a Slack channel as well for, we have created a Slack channel for Cyprus related queries. You can join there as well. Thank you guys. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Stay safe, guys. Happy testing. Bye.